Are you hurting? Pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet now and see the miracle God can do for you. You didn't click on this video because everything is fine. Something brought you here. Maybe you can't sleep. Maybe the silence around you feels heavier than usual. Maybe you're holding back tears no one sees. Or maybe you've reached the point where even your faith feels like it's fading. You're not alone. And no, this isn't just another video about prayer. This is different. Because this is about the kind of prayer that doesn't come from the lips, but from the ache in your soul. We live in a world that tells us to stay strong, smile, move on, push through. But what if I told you that God listens most closely when you have no strength left to fake it? What if your brokenness isn't a failure, but the exact doorway through which mercy enters? There is a prayer so powerful, so forgotten by many, that it has the ability to pull a soul out of despair and place it in the arms of Christ. Not through loud declarations, not through perfect words, but through surrender, through trust, through the broken hallelujah that only someone in pain can truly offer. This prayer is not complicated. You don't need to understand theology. You don't need to pretend to be holy. You just need to show up. With your wounds, with your confusion, with your grief, and let Him do the rest. The Divine Mercy Chaplet is not just a devotion. It's a lifeline for the soul that's drowning. It's not just a tradition for the pious. It's a rescue rope for the sinner, the exhausted, the forgotten. This isn't about being perfect. This is about being real. Because it's in that raw honesty, that place where you're no longer pretending, that God meets you with everything He has. Mercy. So if your heart is hurting, if you're wondering how much longer you can carry what no one else sees, this is your moment. Stay with me. Not because I have the answers, but because the one who does is listening, and He's closer than you think. Now, let's begin where all healing begins. Not with a solution, but with a surrender. When pain becomes a prayer, when pain hits, everything changes. Your plans, your peace, your sense of control. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't knock. It just walks in and sits with you, uninvited, unwanted, unavoidable. And when it stays longer than you thought it would, something inside begins to collapse. You stop looking for explanations. You stop trying to fix it. At some point, you just sit in the middle of it, silent, aching, wondering if anyone, even God, sees what you're going through. But what if I told you He does? And not only does He see it, He hears it. Because pain, when surrendered, becomes a language of the soul. One that doesn't need translation, one that heaven understands perfectly. It's not the kind of prayer you find in a book. It's not scripted or eloquent. It's raw. It's wordless. It's holy. We were taught that prayer means speaking, kneeling, reciting. But some of the greatest prayers ever lifted weren't spoken at all. They were wept, groaned, breathed. The soul doesn't always pray in language. Sometimes it prays in exhaustion, in silence, in stillness. And sometimes, in the middle of pain, your very existence becomes a prayer, a living sacrifice. God doesn't require perfect phrasing. He's not grading your ability to speak clearly through the tears. He's listening to what you can't even say. He's hearing what your heart is screaming, even if your lips can't move. And that's what makes pain so powerful. Not because it's beautiful, but because it's real. And God is drawn to what is real. When Jesus walked this earth, He didn't run from broken people. He was drawn to them. The bleeding woman, the lepers, the blind, the demon-possessed, the grieving, the rejected, the ones who had nothing left to give but their suffering. He didn't require them to understand Scripture. He didn't ask for qualifications. He saw their pain, and he moved. That's the same Jesus who listens to you now. When you hold a rosary and can barely get through a single Hail Mary, that's prayer. When you sit in the dark with a racing heart, whispering, "Help me," that's prayer. When you stare at the ceiling, unable to speak because the grief is too loud, that is prayer too. You may not feel holy, you may not feel strong, but holiness was never about feeling. It's about surrender. And when you bring your pain to the foot of the cross, it doesn't get ignored. It gets held. It gets sanctified. The Divine Mercy Chaplet exists for moments like these. It's not a ritual reserved for the pious. It's a lifeline for the broken. Every word of that prayer is soaked in the blood and water that poured from the heart of Jesus. It wasn't written for people who have it all together. It was handed to a simple Polish nun to give to the world, for souls on the edge, for those in despair, for the sinner who doesn't know how to come back, for the grieving mother, the suicidal teenager, the exhausted father, the addict, the abandoned, the forgotten, the ones who cry behind closed doors because no one else can handle their truth. And if that sounds like you, then understand this. Your pain is not a barrier to God. It's the doorway. He's not waiting for you to feel better before you come to Him. He's waiting for you to come to Him as you are, exactly like this. Because this is when you're closest to Him. Not when you pretend to be strong, but when you let yourself be weak in His presence. Prayer is not about changing God. It's about letting God change you. And nothing opens your heart more than suffering. Nothing humbles your pride more than the moments when you can't fix it. And nothing invites mercy faster than honesty. That's why the chaplet is so powerful when prayed in pain. It becomes more than a devotion. It becomes a cry from the heart of a child to the heart of the Father. You don't need to understand it all. You don't need to feel it. You just need to begin. Say the words even if your faith is shaking. Say them even if your voice cracks. Say them while you're still bleeding. You don't have to be ready. You just have to be real. The prayer that comes from your pain may be the most pure offering you'll ever give. It doesn't need perfection. It just needs presence. And right now, your presence is enough. So if your heart is breaking, if everything feels too heavy, if you feel like giving up, pray. Not because you have the strength, but because He has the mercy. And that's all you need. The divine mercy you were never taught. They told you the divine mercy is powerful. They may have even taught you how to pray the chaplet. But no one explained what's really happening when those words leave your lips. No one told you what the enemy sees when you pick up those beads. No one told you why this devotion is feared by hell and cherished by heaven. That's the divine mercy you were never taught. Most people see the chaplet as just another prayer in the long list of Catholic devotions. They think of it as something nice, optional, something to be done at 3 o'clock if you remember. But they don't realize it was never meant to be optional. It was a direct request from Jesus, given to Saint Faustina for one reason. Because time is running out. Because the world is breaking. Because souls are falling into despair. And this prayer is one of the last hopes for many of them. What you weren't taught is that the Divine Mercy Chaplet is a spiritual weapon. Each time you say, "Have mercy on us and on the whole world," you're stepping into the gap between justice and mercy. You are standing between the suffering of Christ and the wounds of the world, and you're saying, "Lord, I believe you died not just for me, but for them, for everyone, even the ones no one else prays for, even the ones who don't believe in you yet, even the ones who hate you." This prayer isn't safe. It's radical. It's not neat. It's desperate. And that's why it's so effective. We often think that the most powerful prayers come from theologians or mystics or saints who spent years in silence. But some of the most earth-shaking prayers come from hospital beds, from prison cells, from dirty kitchens and broken marriages, and the inside of cars parked outside cemeteries. They come from hearts that are shattered but still willing to trust. That's the Divine Mercy Chaplet at its core. A cry of trust from the middle of the storm. No one told you that, when you pray this chaplet, you are entering into the wounds of Jesus. Not just remembering them, but spiritually placing your own suffering into them. Every pain, every doubt, every fear, it goes into his pierced side, and it doesn't disappear. It gets transformed. There's something that happens in heaven when this prayer is offered. The veil lifts. The wounds of Christ begin to shine. The throne of the Father is approached not with pride, but with pleading. And instead of wrath, mercy flows, not because we deserve it, but because he already paid the price. And when we repeat that sacrifice through our prayer, when we echo the trust of Jesus in his own agony, we are swept into something eternal. The problem is, we treat this prayer too lightly. We mumble the words. We rush through the beads. We don't stop to consider what it cost heaven to give us this weapon. We don't realize the blood that purchased the mercy we now call upon. If we did, we would tremble each time we said it. You were never taught that this prayer isn't just for the dead or the dying. It's for the spiritually dying, the emotionally lost, the ones who smile on the outside but are screaming on the inside. It's for the parents worried about their children, for the elderly left alone, for the addict who wants to quit but can't. It's for those who think they've gone too far to come back, for those who think God stopped listening. It's for you, right now. This devotion wasn't given to the powerful. It was entrusted to a hidden nun in a convent no one had ever heard of. Because God always hides his greatest treasures in places no one looks. And he revealed it not with thunder, but with fire. A fire of mercy that still burns through time and touches anyone humble enough to say, "Jesus, I trust in you." So when you pick up that rosary and begin the chaplet, remember, you are not just praying. You are standing before heaven and earth and pleading for mercy, not only for yourself, but for a world that desperately needs it. You are joining your broken voice to the cries of the saints, and God hears you. This is not just a devotion. This is a lifeline. This is a mystery. This is divine mercy. Not the one in books or holy cards, but the one that reaches into your midnight and says, "You are not too far. It is not too late. I am still here." And that is the part no one ever told you. Why God allows you to break before he heals. You prayed, you waited, you begged, and still it broke. The relationship ended. The diagnosis came. The anxiety stayed. The silence from heaven grew louder. You did everything you knew how to do, and yet nothing changed. So you ask the question that burns in every hurting heart. If God loves me, why is he allowing this? This isn't doubt. This is human. This is what every soul wrestles with in the dark. Not just the pain itself, but the confusion inside it. The idea that maybe you weren't good enough. Maybe he's punishing you. Maybe you missed something. Or worse, maybe he's just not there at all. But what if you're not being punished? What if you're being prepared? What if the breaking isn't the end of your story, but the beginning of something deeper, something sacred that only pain can reveal? We don't like that. We want healing without hurting. We want resurrection without the cross. But that's not how heaven works. Before God brings healing, He brings humility. Not because He wants to crush you, but because He wants you to stop trying to save yourself. We spend our lives holding everything together, trying to be strong, trying to make it make sense. But strength without surrender becomes pride, and pride keeps us from grace. So sometimes, when our walls are too thick, when our logic is too loud, when our hearts are too guarded, God allows what we fear most, the breaking. Not because He is cruel, but because only when it all falls apart can He finally reach us. There is a mercy hidden in collapse. There is a grace in the unraveling. When you hit the end of your strength, you fall straight into His. That's not punishment. That's rescue. The divine mercy is not just a promise of forgiveness, it's a process. And part of that process is allowing the soul to become poor in spirit, emptied of illusions, idols, and self-reliance, so that it can finally be filled with God. When you lose what you thought you needed, you begin to discover what you actually need. And what you need is Him. This is why the chaplet is so powerful during suffering. Because in those moments, the words aren't coming from your lips. They're being pulled from your wounds. For the sake of His sorrowful passion, hits differently when you're in your own passion. Have mercy on us becomes more than a prayer. It becomes your survival cry. Pain doesn't disqualify you from grace. It accelerates your encounter with it. Think about every healing in the Gospels. Before the miracle, there was always a breaking. Blindness, bleeding, paralysis, grief, death. No one was healed who didn't first lose something. No one was made whole who didn't first realize they were broken. And maybe that's where you are right now. You didn't come here for a theology lecture. You came here because something in your life is breaking. And maybe all you needed to hear is this. It's okay. It's okay that it hurts. It's okay that you don't understand. It's okay that you're not strong right now. God is not waiting for you to be fixed before He loves you. He is loving you through the breaking. Right now, exactly as you are. The divine mercy is not a reward for the perfect. It is a rescue for the broken. And that breaking, that moment where everything feels like it's slipping through your fingers, that might be the moment God has been waiting for. Not because He wants your pain, but because He wants your permission. He wants to enter the places you've tried to handle on your own for too long. So, if you're asking why He allowed the breaking, maybe it's because He couldn't reach your heart any other way. Maybe the pain that's bringing you to your knees is also bringing you home, not just to healing, but to Him, the chaplet that whispers back to heaven. When you hold the beads of the Divine Mercy Chaplet in your hands, it might feel small, ordinary, maybe even quiet. But what you hold is more than a string of beads. It's a bridge. It's a channel. It's a prayer that carries your brokenness straight to the heart of God. And the remarkable truth is this. The chaplet doesn't just travel one way. It whispers back to heaven. Every bead, every word, every intention you lay upon it becomes a voice that moves the unseen. It doesn't echo in empty air. It pierces eternity. When Saint Faustina received the chaplet from Jesus, He didn't describe it as a ritual for the holy or the disciplined. He called it a weapon of mercy for the souls in crisis, a prayer that could touch the lost, the suffering, and the hopeless. Imagine that. A prayer simple enough for anyone, yet powerful enough to shake the heavens. And it doesn't matter if your voice shakes, if your hands tremble, if your heart is barely able to hope. The chaplet carries your fragility and transforms it into a language heaven understands. This prayer isn't about memorizing words. It's about allowing your pain, your longing, and your trust to flow through it. When you pray, "Eternal Father, I offer you the body and blood, soul and divinity of your dearly beloved Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, in atonement for our sins and those of the whole world," you are offering your own heart, your own wounds, your own fears along with it. You are speaking on behalf of humanity, and at the same time, you are pouring yourself into the mercy of Christ. The chaplet whispers back because it's not just repetition, it's invitation. Each bead, each prayer, each pause in the rhythm allows the Holy Spirit to descend. It's as if the words themselves rise. Gather your deepest intentions, your secret griefs, your hidden tears, and carry them into the throne room of heaven. You are heard. You are not ignored. And in that whisper back, you begin to feel the presence of God touching the very place in you that aches the most. Even when your pain is private, hidden, and silent, the chaplet gives it a voice. Your fears about the future, your wounds from the past, the guilt you carry from mistakes no one knows about. It all becomes part of a dialogue that heaven has been waiting for. And when you pray from the heart, with honesty and surrender, the chaplet becomes more than a prayer. It becomes a conversation between your soul and God, a sacred exchange where your suffering and His mercy meet. Many don't understand this. They pray mechanically, thinking it's enough to say the words. But the chaplet only whispers back when it is joined with the reality of your soul. It needs your brokenness. It needs your honesty. It needs the place where you have nothing left but your trust. That's why so many miracles happen quietly, invisibly, in the lives of those who pray the chaplet faithfully. Because it's not about the quantity of words, but the depth of surrender. Think of it this way. Every prayer you offer is a pebble thrown into an infinite sea. Some waves are visible, others are not. But the chaplet carries your pebble in a current you cannot see, moving it into the very heart of God's mercy. And sometimes, without warning, that mercy comes back to you as peace, as healing, as relief, as the subtle certainty that you are not alone. The chaplet doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't ask you to be spiritually impressive. It only asks for presence. And in your presence, even at your weakest, God responds. He whispers back. Not in words you hear with your ears, but in the silence that surrounds them. The silence that fills your heart with hope, reassurance, and mercy. So the next time you pick up the beads, know this. What you are holding is a lifeline, a voice, a channel, and a prayer that is already moving in both directions. What goes up doesn't disappear. What comes back is unseen, but it is real, and it is powerful. It carries your pain to heaven, and it returns as mercy. The chaplet whispers back, and in its whisper, you are reminded that God has not abandoned you, that your pain is seen, that your prayers are heard, and that miracles are already being stirred by the same voice you are offering. You are never praying alone. The chaplet has already begun to answer. The sacred mystery of the 3 o'clock hour. There is a moment in every day that carries a weight most of us overlook. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It doesn't stand out on the clock. It passes silently, like any other hour. But in heaven, it is unlike any other. Jesus himself called it the hour of mercy. He told Saint Faustina that at that hour he desires the world to pray, to seek his mercy, to surrender. And he promised that those who pray with faith at that hour will receive extraordinary grace. Most people never notice. They are busy. They are distracted. They are rushing through life. And yet, that hour remains a sacred invitation, waiting quietly for anyone willing to pause and enter it. The mystery isn't just the time itself. It's what happens when you stop the world around you and place yourself in God's presence at the precise moment He called special. That is when heaven leans in. That is when mercy flows with a depth and intensity you cannot manufacture on your own. Imagine it. The hour of 3 o'clock, when the day is winding down, when fatigue is setting in, when problems feel heavier than they did in the morning. This is not random. This is deliberate. Jesus chose this time because it aligns with His own suffering on the cross. It is the hour He endured betrayal, rejection, the weight of every sin, and the piercing of His side. At that hour, our prayer is not just a plea. It is joined with the eternal act of His mercy, His love, and His sacrifice. Your pain, your tears, your questions are united with His suffering. This is why the chaplet prayed at 3 o'clock carries a force that is extraordinary. It becomes a living connection, not just between you and God, but between your heart and the heart of Jesus during the most intense moment of His passion. And it doesn't matter if your prayer is simple, incomplete, or shaky. What matters is faith. What matters is presence. What matters is surrender. Because God measures the depth of the heart, not the precision of words. Saint Faustina's diary tells us that many graces are released in this hour. Souls are healed, hearts are comforted, burdens are lifted, and even the most desperate situations, the ones that seem impossible, are touched. And yet, most people ignore it. They let 3 o'clock pass without recognizing the significance, without claiming the promise. And the mercy that could have been theirs remains available, quietly waiting for attention. This hour is sacred because it is a window into eternity. When you pray the chaplet at this time, you are not praying in isolation. You are praying in unity with Christ's sacrifice, with the angels, and with all the faithful who have gone before. Your prayer is amplified. It moves differently in heaven. It reaches farther. It penetrates deeper. It becomes a spiritual current that carries your intentions and your pain straight to God's throne. And the beautiful part is that the chaplet allows anyone, regardless of age, condition, or understanding, to enter into this sacred hour. It doesn't require knowledge, status, or eloquence. It requires only a heart willing to pause, to humble itself, and to trust. That pause, that act of attention, is itself an offering. It is a surrender of time, a surrender of self, a surrender of control. And in that surrender, mercy flows. The 3 o'clock hour is a reminder that God's timing is perfect, that He has prepared specific moments for us to experience His love and healing. It is a secret invitation to step out of routine, out of distraction, and into the divine plan. When you honor this hour with prayer, you allow God to meet you in a concentrated way, to pour out grace, and to bring light into the corners of your life that feel the darkest. Your pain, your questions, your unanswered prayers. They are not ignored. They are not forgotten. At 3 o'clock, heaven listens more intently. The chaplet becomes more than a string of beads. It becomes a conduit of mercy, a channel of grace, a dialogue with the God who knows every wound, every scar, every silent cry. And in this sacred hour, miracles begin to move. Not always instantly, not always visibly, but they begin. Every time you pause at 3 o'clock, you align yourself with the rhythm of divine mercy. You step into a mystery that few understand, but that touches all who open their hearts. You participate in something eternal. You place your suffering alongside the suffering of Christ, and He transforms it into prayer, into redemption, into hope. The mystery is not abstract. It is alive. It is powerful. It is present for you, right now, at this hour, waiting only for your attention. What Saint Faustina saw that changed everything. Saint Faustina was not a mystic who sought attention. She was a simple nun, living a quiet life, praying, suffering, and serving others. And yet, God chose her to reveal something the world desperately needed to hear: the depth and breadth of His divine mercy. She saw visions that were not just symbolic, not just beautiful paintings in her mind, but living, breathing encounters with Jesus Himself. And what she saw changed everything. One of the most extraordinary revelations was the mercy that flows from the heart of Jesus, waiting for the repentant, the suffering, and the broken. Saint Faustina saw the world as it truly is, full of hearts weighed down by sin, fear, despair, and loneliness. She saw souls teetering on the edge, unsure if God still listened. And then she saw the response of Christ, a love so intense, so infinite, that it poured over every human weakness, every hidden wound, every silent cry for help. In her visions, Jesus revealed the chaplet as a lifeline for the world. He did not call it a mere devotion. He called it a prayer that could reach the hidden corners of the soul, that could release mercy where judgment seemed inevitable. Saint Faustina saw souls healed, hearts restored, families reconciled, lives transformed, all through the simple act of praying the chaplet with trust and surrender. And she recorded it not for fame, not for glory, but to give humanity access to this gift, this divine channel that was previously hidden from ordinary eyes. What she saw also included the reality of pain and suffering. She witnessed how God allows trials, fears, and darkness to enter our lives, not to destroy us, but to create openings for mercy. She saw that when a person prays the chaplet during suffering, the prayer is amplified. The words, the intention, the tears, all are lifted straight to the throne of God. And then, what she saw next was astonishing. Mercy returned. Not always in ways the person expected, not always immediately, but with precision, power, and a depth that transformed the soul from the inside out. Saint Faustina also saw the dangers of neglecting this prayer. Souls that ignored the chaplet, that did not trust in divine mercy, were left to wander in despair, unaware that grace was within reach. That is why she emphasized it repeatedly in her diary. The chaplet is not an optional devotion. It is a weapon of mercy for every heart willing to approach God with humility. It is a lifeline for those in agony, for those whose faith is wavering, for those who feel invisible and forgotten. She recorded the promise that any soul who prays the chaplet at the hour of mercy, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, with complete trust in God's love, will receive forgiveness, protection, and grace. And she did not limit this promise to the dying or the devout. She made it universal, for sinners, for the weak, for the desperate, for anyone willing to say, even silently, Jesus, I trust in you. Saint Faustina's visions also revealed the intensity of God's desire to save. Jesus told her that there are hearts that cry out for mercy, and there is nothing he cannot do to reach them if they open themselves to his grace. He showed her that the chaplet is a key that opens the gates of heaven for souls weighed down by sin, grief, and suffering. She saw that when someone prays it with sincerity, they are not just participating in ritual. They are entering into a living encounter with God's infinite mercy. Her revelations were not abstract theology. They were practical. They were meant to guide the faithful through the storms of life, to give direction in moments of fear, and to offer hope when all seemed lost. She saw the chaplet working in invisible ways, transforming hearts, softening hardened souls, lifting burdens that human eyes could not see, and creating opportunities for reconciliation, healing, and spiritual renewal. Saint Faustina's experiences teach us that mercy is not passive, it is active. It responds to trust. It seeks those who are hurting. It moves in response to prayer. And she reminds us that we are invited into this movement, into this dialogue, into this living reality of divine mercy. Her visions are a call to action, to trust, to surrender, to pray, and to believe that nothing is too broken for God to redeem. When you pray the chaplet, you are following in the footsteps of what she saw. You are participating in the same mercy she witnessed, and the same miracles, transformations, and divine encounters are available to you today. You do not need to be holy or perfect. You do not need to have a spiritual title or knowledge. You only need a heart willing to trust in the one who revealed his mercy through the humble, suffering soul of Saint Faustina. The hidden wound Jesus responds to. There is a wound that most people carry but rarely recognize. It is invisible to the eye, silent to the world, and often hidden even from ourselves. It is the wound of abandonment, the wound of feeling unseen, unloved, and forgotten. It is the quiet ache of the heart that wonders if anyone really cares. It is the loneliness that whispers, "No one is here for me," even when the world is crowded around you. And Jesus sees it. He does not just notice it. He is drawn to it. He seeks it out. He wants to enter it. Many people pray and hope for miracles, but they do not understand that this hidden wound is often the very key to receiving mercy. Jesus responds to the deepest, quietest part of your suffering, the part that no one else can reach. It is where your pride is gone, where defenses are down, where the soul is raw and honest. That is where his mercy moves the fastest and the most powerfully. This is why the Chaplet of Divine Mercy is so transformative. It does not just address the surface pain you can articulate. It reaches into the invisible places of your heart, where shame, guilt, fear, and loneliness have taken residence. The hidden wound is not something we can fix on our own. We cannot cover it with achievements, distractions, or temporary joys. It is the wound of being human, of being vulnerable, of carrying burdens that feel too heavy to share. And yet, it is precisely this wound that invites the presence of Christ in ways nothing else can. When you pray the chaplet, even in silence or with trembling lips, you are giving him access to that most secret place of your heart. And he responds, not always in ways you expect, not always in ways you see immediately, but he responds with a depth of love that transforms the wound from a source of pain into a channel of grace. This wound may appear as despair, anxiety, grief, or a sense of failure. It may show up as longing for someone who is gone, unresolved guilt from the past, or fear for the future. It may manifest as emptiness that no success, relationship, or comfort can fill. And it is exactly this wound that Jesus wants to touch. Because when he does, nothing in your life remains the same. It becomes a point of encounter, a place where you realize that even your brokenness is precious to Him. Many pray superficially, asking for relief or material blessings, and wonder why they do not experience the profound transformation they hoped for. The answer often lies in the hidden wound. Until you bring that deepest, most vulnerable part of yourself to Him, the part you have tried to hide, ignore, or numb, His full mercy cannot flow through you. The chaplet is the tool that allows this to happen. Each prayer, each bead, each repetition of "Have mercy on us and on the whole world" is a whisper from your wounded heart directly into the heart of Jesus. And that whisper awakens a response in heaven. Jesus does not respond to the loudest voices, the most confident words, or the most visible suffering first. He responds to the place where the soul is quiet, humble, and honest. That is why some of the most powerful miracles, conversions, and transformations happen in the lives of those who feel the most invisible. The hidden wound is not a weakness. It is the very invitation to encounter the power of divine mercy. The beauty of the chaplet is that it allows you to name this wound before God without having to explain, justify, or understand it. You simply bring it to Him bead by bead, breath by breath, and let His mercy do what words cannot. It is a safe space to reveal the secrets of your heart, the fears you cannot share with anyone else, and the grief you carry alone. And when you do, you will find that the same wound that once caused despair becomes the very pathway for hope, healing, and intimacy with Christ. Your hidden wound is not a punishment. It is a sacred place. It is where God wants to meet you. It is where He wants to pour mercy, healing, and love into your life. And the chaplet is the key to letting that happen. Every time you pray it, every time you surrender that hidden part of yourself, you are allowing Jesus to respond in ways the world cannot understand, ways that transform your pain into a living encounter with His mercy. Why most people pray but never receive the miracle. Many people pray every day with devotion and hope. They kneel, they fold their hands, they recite words learned long ago, and they ask for miracles, for guidance, for relief. And yet, so often, the miracle does not come. The sickness persists, the pain continues, the anxiety lingers, the broken relationships remain broken. They wonder, am I doing something wrong? Does God not hear me? The truth is, it is not about how often you pray, how loudly you pray, or even how perfectly you recite the words. The issue is much deeper. Most people never receive the miracle because they are holding back. They are holding back faith, holding back trust, holding back the surrender that God requires for His mercy to flow fully. They pray with a divided heart, unsure if it is worth it, wondering if it will make any difference. They repeat words as if they are a routine, a habit, or a ritual to be completed. But miracles are not manufactured through repetition alone. They are born in the heart that dares to trust when everything seems impossible. In the heart that says, "I do not understand, but I will trust you anyway." Another reason miracles are delayed is doubt. Doubt acts like a wall between the soul and God's mercy. It whispers, "This will not work. You are not worthy. God does not care." Doubt can make even the most beautiful prayer mechanical, empty, and powerless. But faith, even faith that trembles and stumbles, has power. Faith does not have to be perfect, but it must be real. It must be willing to take the step, to say the words, to offer the heart fully, even when the mind questions, even when the spirit hesitates. Bitterness and unresolved resentment are also barriers. People pray with anger at life, at circumstances, or even at God Himself. They ask for mercy and blessing, while their heart is clenched with grievance, judgment, or envy. God's mercy is not forced. It requires a heart open enough to receive it. The chaplet, the Divine Mercy Prayer, is designed to soften this heart, to dissolve pride, to bring humility and trust into the very place where the miracle is meant to touch. But if the heart resists, even subtly, the mercy cannot fully enter. Many never receive the miracle because they expect it to look like a sudden, dramatic change. They want signs they can see, answers they can measure, results they can control. But divine mercy works differently. It often moves invisibly, quietly, subtly, aligning circumstances, changing hearts, and preparing the soul over time. If we insist on immediate, visible proof, we can miss the miracle unfolding right before us. The answer may not be instant, but it is precise, perfect, and far beyond what we could plan. Another obstacle is routine prayer without presence. Many go through motions, recite the chaplet because they have been told to, and then return to life unchanged. Prayer is not a charm. It is not magic. It is an encounter. And an encounter requires attention, humility, and honesty. To pray effectively is to bring your entire being, your doubts, your fears, your wounds, your longing, to God, and then leave the result in His hands. Without presence, the words become empty. Without surrender, the miracle is blocked. But the Divine Mercy Chaplet has a way of reaching beyond all these barriers. Even a timid, hesitant, or weary heart can connect with mercy if it is willing to let go, to trust, to open itself completely. That is why Saint Faustina emphasized the importance of trust, of praying with complete surrender, of giving God permission to act without our interference. It is not the quantity of prayer that matters, but the depth of heart, the willingness to believe, and the courage to leave everything in His hands. The miracle is always available. The question is whether we are available to receive it. Are we willing to let go of control, doubt, bitterness, and expectation? Are we willing to let the chaplet transform us from the inside out, to soften the heart, and to prepare the soul to receive the mercy that is already moving toward us? Many pray, but only those who surrender fully, even amidst their pain, will experience the miracle in its fullness. When you pray the chaplet with honesty, with trust, with a heart open to transformation, you are stepping into the flow of divine mercy that can change everything. The miracle is not denied to you. It is not withheld. It is waiting for your willingness to trust, to surrender, and to receive. And when you do, you will discover that what seemed impossible becomes possible. What seemed lost is restored, and what seemed dead is made alive. The day my pain was answered by mercy. There is a moment in life when pain becomes unbearable, when the weight of suffering feels too heavy to carry, when the world seems silent and God feels distant. I want you to imagine that moment, because it was real for me, and it may be real for you right now. I remember sitting in a quiet room, the air thick with despair. Everything I had tried to fix had failed. My heart ached from loss. My mind was filled with questions I could not answer. And yet, there was a whisper inside, fragile but persistent, that said, "Pray, trust, keep going." I had heard of the Divine Mercy Chaplet many times, but it had never felt urgent. That day, however, it became my lifeline. My pain was not theoretical. It was raw, immediate, and consuming. I picked up the beads, almost mechanically at first, unsure if prayer could really reach this level of suffering. And then, as I spoke each word, something began to shift. My tears flowed freely. My trembling voice carried my deepest fears and hidden griefs. I was offering not just words, but the very essence of my broken heart. Something extraordinary happened in that room. I cannot describe it fully with language, because it transcended explanation. It was as if the air itself had changed. A presence entered that was both gentle and powerful, tender and unshakable. The weight of my pain began to lift, not instantly, not miraculously in a visible sense, but in the quiet, undeniable certainty that I was no longer alone. My despair was acknowledged, my brokenness was embraced, and in that embrace, healing began. It was a revelation that mercy does not always look like what we expect. It does not always arrive in dramatic signs or sudden resolutions. Sometimes it comes as a profound peace in the middle of suffering. Sometimes it comes as the courage to continue. Sometimes it comes as a subtle shift in perception. The recognition that pain does not have the final word. On that day, I experienced all of these. The chaplet had done more than I could have imagined. It had transformed my suffering into a bridge to God's mercy. What struck me most was how personal it felt. It was not a generic blessing or a distant miracle. It was specific. It addressed the wounds I had carried in silence. It reached the exact corners of my heart that no one else could see. And that is how divine mercy works. It knows the soul intimately. It knows the hidden griefs, the unanswered questions, the fears and doubts. It meets you where you are, not where you think you should be. It does not demand perfection, only honesty, vulnerability, and trust. That day, I realized that pain is not the enemy. Pain is a pathway. Pain is the doorway to mercy when it is surrendered, when it is joined with the chaplet, when it is offered as prayer. The words themselves are important, but more important is the willingness to let God enter the brokenness fully. He does not merely hear the prayer. He transforms the one who prays. My pain became a channel through which mercy flowed, and that flow continues long after the prayer is finished. I also understood that miracles are often invisible at first. You may not feel them immediately. You may not see the results. But the chaplet works in ways beyond human comprehension. It prepares the heart. It softens resistance. It opens the soul to grace. And one day, often unexpectedly, the fruits of that prayer appear. My life was not instantly fixed, but I was changed. My heart was healed. My perspective shifted. I could carry my burdens differently. I could see hope where before there was only despair. The lesson of that day is simple, yet profound. Do not underestimate the power of the chaplet, even when your pain feels too great, even when your faith feels weak, even when the world seems indifferent. Mercy is already moving toward you. It waits for your willingness to surrender, to trust, to pray with everything you have, even if all you have is brokenness. And when you do, the answer will come. It may not come as you expect, but it will come, and it will be enough. If you are hurting now, know this: your pain is not ignored. Your suffering is not in vain. The chaplet is a bridge to divine mercy, a lifeline for the soul, a way for your broken heart to meet the heart of Christ. That day, my pain was answered, and it can be answered for you too. The mercy is real, it is present, it is waiting, and it begins the moment you place your trust in it. When you have no words left, pray this. There comes a moment in suffering when words fail. You have cried, begged, and whispered every prayer you know, and still the weight remains. You may feel empty, exhausted, or incapable of forming coherent thoughts. You may sit in silence, your heart screaming, but your lips are mute. That is precisely the moment when the Divine Mercy Chaplet becomes most powerful. Because prayer is not only about speaking, it is about surrender. It is about allowing God to hear the cries your soul cannot articulate. When words are gone, prayer is no longer a performance. It becomes pure presence. Each bead of the chaplet carries your heart, your pain, your longing, even if your voice falters. You do not need eloquence. You do not need mastery. You need honesty. The chaplet transforms what is unspoken into a language heaven understands. Even in silence, every bead is a bridge. Every intention, every tear, every trembling hand is a living prayer reaching the throne of God. Many people feel powerless in their suffering. They think that because they cannot find the right words, because their thoughts are scattered, because their faith feels fragile, their prayer is worthless. But that is not true. Divine mercy is not limited by words. It is limitless, infinite, and responsive to the heart. When you offer your brokenness, even without words, you are praying more deeply than anyone who speaks fluently without feeling. Your pain becomes the prayer itself. Your struggle becomes the offering. Your surrender becomes the vessel of grace. In this moment of wordlessness, you enter the most intimate place of prayer. The space where God does not need explanation, where He does not ask for perfection, where He meets you in truth. He sees every tear, every longing, every hidden grief, and He moves. The chaplet, when prayed in this way, amplifies that movement. Each repetition is not just a word, but a conduit for mercy to flow. Each pause between decades is not emptiness, but an invitation for God to fill the silence with His presence. Think of it like this. Your inability to speak is not a weakness. It is a surrender. When you can no longer articulate your need, you are giving God room to act. When your heart is too heavy to frame sentences, you are allowing divine mercy to fill the space. The chaplet becomes the rhythm that carries your soul, the pattern that gives shape to your invisible cries, the structure that allows you to pour everything into God without holding back. Even those who have lost hope can pray in this way. The wordless prayer does not require strength, understanding, or clarity. It only requires a willingness to be present, to offer what you have, and to trust that God hears, even when you cannot speak. Your inability to find words does not diminish your prayer. It intensifies it. Because what the chaplet does is take the silence of your heart and transform it into a living, active, powerful petition to the divine. This form of prayer teaches the soul that God's mercy is not bound by human ability. It is not dependent on intellect, language, or ritual skill. It responds to the deepest, most authentic expression of trust. And that is why many miracles occur in moments of desperation, when the person can no longer pray with words, but only with raw, exposed, surrendered heart. When you pick up the chaplet in such a moment, you are not alone. The prayers of countless saints, the presence of angels, and the infinite mercy of Jesus accompany you. The chaplet becomes more than a devotion. It becomes a channel, a dialogue, a bridge between your unspoken need and the full, overflowing mercy of God. You do not need words. You only need presence, surrender, and trust. So if you are exhausted, if you feel your heart cannot speak, if your mind is scattered and your hope is fragile, know this. Pick up the chaplet and begin. Even if you cannot form a sentence, even if you cannot finish the prayers, even if every word falters, your prayer is being heard. Mercy is responding, Healing is moving, grace is present, and in the silence of your heart, the invisible miracle begins. What happens in the invisible realm? When you pray. When you pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet, you are not alone. The moment you lift your heart in prayer, an invisible world stirs. Angels move. Heaven leans in. The forces of mercy begin to work, unseen yet powerful. Every word you speak, every bead you touch, sends ripples through a realm most people cannot perceive. And while your body remains in the quiet of your room, your prayer travels beyond sight, beyond time, beyond the limitations of the physical world. Saint Faustina's visions reveal a truth most do not realize. When you pray with sincerity, your intention is like a spark in the spiritual realm. That spark draws attention, not only from Christ himself, but from the army of angels assigned to assist, protect, and guide. Your prayer is joined with countless other prayers across the globe, forming a tapestry of mercy, hope, and intercession. And each thread matters. Every whisper, every tear, every silent word carries power that cannot be measured by human understanding. In the invisible realm, the chaplet activates what Saint Faustina described as streams of grace flowing from the heart of Jesus. These streams reach places in the soul where no human eyes can see, touching wounds hidden even from yourself. They penetrate darkness, despair, and fear. They surround the suffering with a presence so gentle yet so compelling that the heart begins to soften, the spirit begins to rise, and the soul begins to trust again. This is not metaphor, it is spiritual reality. Your prayer also has a protective effect. Forces that seek to oppress, discourage, or harm are restrained. Angels work to shield the heart that prays, to guide thoughts, to nudge decisions, to create openings for God's mercy to manifest. Even before you see results, changes are taking place on a level invisible to the human eye. Your suffering is not ignored. Your pleas are not wasted. Every bead, every repetition, every surrender moves the machinery of heaven. The invisible realm also responds in ways that are mysterious, but real. Sometimes, obstacles begin to shift in subtle ways. Doors you thought closed start to open. Relationships that seemed impossible to restore find new footing. Your perspective, once clouded by despair, begins to clear. These are the visible effects of invisible movements. What begins as a spiritual ripple transforms reality in ways only God can orchestrate. The chaplet also connects your prayer to those in need who you may never meet. Your intentions touch souls you cannot see, heal wounds you cannot witness, and provide mercy to places you cannot imagine. The spiritual realm knows no distance, no time, no limitation. When you pray the chaplet, you become part of this unseen network of divine action, a conduit for mercy reaching into lives across the world. And yet, the most profound activity occurs within your own soul. The invisible realm interacts directly with your heart. The streams of grace touch hidden fears, suppressed pain, and unacknowledged sin. The light of mercy illuminates corners that even you avoid. Shadows of doubt and despair begin to dissolve, and a sense of peace enters where confusion and anxiety once ruled. Your prayer becomes a channel for transformation, not just externally, but internally, in ways that no one else can see. This is why consistency matters. When you pray the chaplet faithfully, you are participating in ongoing spiritual work that extends far beyond your understanding. It may feel quiet, it may feel slow, but it is not idle. Every act of prayer is a seed planted in the invisible realm, and seeds take time to grow. They move, they align with God's will, They bear fruit in both the seen and unseen. The invisible realm responds to honesty, surrender, and trust. Superficial prayer has little effect. But when your heart is broken, when your need is raw, when your intention is pure, the spiritual forces converge. Angels move. Grace flows. Healing begins. Protection surrounds. And miracles, often invisible at first, are set into motion. So the next time you pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet, know this: your prayer is alive. It does not end with the last word you speak. It continues in the unseen, touching heaven and earth simultaneously. Your intention, your surrender, and your faith are creating a spiritual reality that is real, powerful, and eternal. The invisible realm is at work, and your prayer is its instrument. This prayer was heaven's response to your pain. Every moment you have been in pain, every tear you have shed, every silent cry you have whispered in the dark, every time your heart felt too heavy to continue, this prayer has been waiting for you. Not because you are perfect, not because you earned it, not because anyone else noticed. It has been waiting because God sees, God knows, and God desires to respond. The Divine Mercy Chaplet is not just a devotion, it is heaven's direct answer to your suffering. Every bead, every word, every intention is a bridge from your brokenness to God's mercy, designed specifically for the wounds you carry. Your pain is not random, it is not meaningless, it is not a punishment, and it is not a void. It is the place where mercy enters most powerfully. Heaven does not need you to be strong, eloquent, or perfect to act. It only needs your honesty, your willingness to surrender, and your trust. When you offer the chaplet from the heart, even if trembling, even if unsure, even if exhausted, you are participating in the divine plan to bring your suffering into the light of Christ's mercy. That is why the prayer is so potent. It has been waiting for your presence. God does not wait for perfect timing, but for surrendered hearts. Your brokenness, your grief, your questions, your despair, they are all part of the invitation. And when you accept that invitation, the response begins. It is subtle at first. It may be a calm in your chest, a clarity in your mind, a small shift in perspective, but it is unmistakable. It is the evidence that heaven is present. It is the proof that mercy is already at work, even when you cannot see the full picture. This is the miracle of the Divine Mercy Chaplet. It does not just ask God to act in the world, it allows Him to act through your heart. Your prayer becomes a vessel, a channel, a living instrument of His mercy. And in that act of surrender, the invisible work of heaven begins. Your suffering is transformed, your wounds are met, your spirit is strengthened, your soul encounters the presence of God in a way that changes everything, sometimes gradually, sometimes immediately, always profoundly. Think of all the moments you believed your pain was too much to endure. Think of all the times you asked, begged, and prayed without seeing results. That is the very reason heaven prepared this prayer for you. It is not a coincidence that you are here now. It is not coincidence that the chaplet exists, that Saint Faustina's revelations were recorded, that this devotion has reached your hands. Every element aligns so that at this precise moment, your heart can encounter mercy. Your suffering can be met with grace. Your brokenness can be transformed. When you pray, you are not just asking for relief. You are stepping into the heart of God's plan. You are participating in a reality that extends beyond time, beyond space, beyond the visible world. You are joining the prayers of countless souls, the intercession of angels, and the infinite mercy of Christ Himself. And your personal pain, your hidden grief, your silent longing. It is not overlooked. It is the very reason this prayer was given. The chaplet is not a remedy for convenience or a simple ritual. It is a divine response to the deepest human need. It meets you where you are, even in your fear, even in your doubt, even in your exhaustion. The mercy it releases is tailored to your heart, to your circumstances, to your soul. It is a personal encounter, a sacred dialogue, a bridge between suffering and healing. So if you have been waiting for God to act, if you have questioned whether your prayers are heard, if you have wondered whether your pain has meaning, know this: the Divine Mercy Chaplet is heaven's response. It has been waiting for your heart, your willingness, your presence. And when you pray, you allow that response to unfold. Your suffering is met, your mercy is received, your life begins to align with the power of God's love. This prayer is not random, it is not optional, it is not delayed, it is your direct invitation to experience divine mercy, tailored for your wounds, your trials, your tears, your very soul. It is heaven reaching down to meet you, embracing you, restoring you, and reminding you that nothing in your life is beyond God's mercy. It is here, it is present, and it is for you. The mercy you seek, the healing you long for, the peace your heart cries out for. It begins the moment you place your trust in this prayer. Your pain is seen. Your suffering is acknowledged. Your heart is met with heaven's love. And that is the greatest miracle of all.